Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my hobby blog. I'm extremely excited today because I just finished one of my favorite trilogies that I've read in a very long time. And I'm talking about book 3 of Philip Chase's Edan series called Return to Edan. This is what the poster looks like. I read this on my Kindle, so I do not have a physical copy, but I do hope to one day have the Broken Binding one because I haven't really delved into Broken Binding yet, and I just love those editions, and I need to get the first one first, so that way I can get the collection going. And I've heard rumors that like the second one's coming soon, but I'm not sure. That's not what this video is about. But I have been really enjoying this series. I think book 1 is just a very awesome ode to fantasy, and I also really enjoyed book 2. I thought book 2 was even better than book 1. I love book 1. I gave that like an 8.5, but I gave book 2 a 9 out of 10, which is not a rating I usually give out. But if it really hits me emotionally and I really enjoy reading it and I can read more than 100 pages in one sitting, like that's usually a pretty good sign for me. But book 3 is one that I had a pretty complicated sort of experience with because I absolutely loved the prologue, and I will be no spoilers for the majority of this. I will dip into some spoilers, stuff that I liked, and some stuff I didn't like so much, which will be fun to talk about. But the first thing I wanted to mention is that I loved the prologue, and I love that we don't really see the main character for the first quarter of the story. I really enjoyed that choice that Philip made. I really loved sort of hearing about it and getting this like really awesome build up to the introduction of our main character, Dayraven specifically. And I really enjoyed like hearing about the Prophet, because everyone's talking about the Prophet of Edan, which after book 2 you should know like who that is. And like as you read this book, we're introduced to a new POV who I think was the absolute star of this book. I absolutely loved her POV. That is the character of Saren. She was awesome. I really enjoyed reading her story. I thought she was just such a great character to read. She is just like every time it was her POV, like I was just so happy because she and Dayraven together are like some of the best like writing I've seen yet in the series, and I just really enjoyed it. I thought the emotions involved in both of the stories was just really fantastic. I really loved the prose as well. There was definitely a lot of like felt like this book mainly felt like a mix of like Robin Hobb and like Steven Erikson with the skeleton of like Tad Williams like writing and stuff like that. Like it was such a great blending of all three of those authors, and it's absolutely like just one of the best books I've read this year, and I'm very happy about that because after book 2 I had some really high expectations after finishing that, because again that was one of my favorite reads, but now it's this one that's even better than book 2, which is, I always love when series do that, when it just gets better and better as you go on. And the character of Dayraven in this book I just really enjoyed, because one of my dislikes of later Wheel of Time books is that we have the main character go through a similar thing where he is sort of like a Christ figure, or also like the, I can't remember the name. I should have looked it up beforehand. I feel bad for this, but I just realized. But there's also like a little bit of the, I guess it's Buddha, right, who is meditating under the tree and sort of healing people who are sick and all this stuff. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I haven't really done my research on that, so I apologize I didn't. But I really enjoyed reading this sort of character because it's not something we get often in fantasy. And when we do get it, it's just very underexplored, which I felt was the case in Wheel of Time in books 12 to 14, I guess, or 13 to 14. But I mean, that wasn't the main focus of the series, I guess. But again, this is why I wish we had Robert Jordan's A Memory of Light, because I think he would have done a lot more with that sort of trope. And Philip does it fantastically. That part was easily my favorite part of this book. The one thing I did not like as much with this book, though, is that there was a little too much fighting, too many battle scenes. And I'm a guy who, I say this all the time, I'm not someone who likes to read battle scenes. But this book, like, I don't know, like, I had a lot of investment in the characters, and it was really emotional getting a lot of the deaths, because a lot of our characters die throughout this book. And that was a shock to me, because I thought most of them would come out on the other side, and they did not. And it was pretty sad to read. But the actual fighting scenes, I felt like it went a little too long for me. But again, I'm someone who doesn't like fighting scenes to begin with, so if you're a fan of that type of writing, then it would probably work very well for you, because he writes it very well. It's very clear what's happening. It's very descriptive, so you get a lot of really great, like, just scenes of battles where you feel like you're actually there, and I do appreciate that about Philip's writing. I just felt like, I mean, again, I'm not a battles guy, so, I wouldn't change it or anything like that, but I really, really enjoyed this book. I think there were some hiccups from the middle to the end that I will go into in the spoiler section, excuse me. But I was really sort of taken aback by how much this met my expectations. And this book did take me a little longer to read. This is almost 800 pages. I did not realize that before I started. I think every book has gotten longer as the series has gone by, so I thought it'd be finished with this a little sooner. I thought I'd get the review out last week, but I'm getting it now today, so apologies for my delay in that, but I really, really love this book. I think I'm going to give this one another 9 out of 10. I think this one's just fantastic. What a great end to the trilogy. It's just incredible. And I also really like the Lord of the Rings parallels, because we get a Gollum-like character in this book. And I wasn't really satisfied with who it ended up being, because I was so, like, satisfied by that character's end in book 2 that I was kind of like, okay, like, I didn't really want to see him in that state. And it was one of the weaknesses of the book, I felt like. But for me to talk more about this, I think I need to go into spoilers, because there's a few things it didn't really click with me. So the first thing, again, for spoilers, don't watch if you haven't read the books, or if you don't care, welcome. But, like, one of the big things that I did not like was that Bledla is the Gollum character, and I thought we were sort of done with his character. I felt like it was really neat writing. I thought it was a really cool POV, sort of, and the prose is fantastic in these sections. I thought that was probably my second favorite, but then when it's revealed that it's Bledla, I was pretty, I guess, disappointed by that, because I was hoping it would be another character that we hadn't seen in a while that was locked up, and I just don't have any sympathy for Bledla at all. So reading these scenes, I'm like, man, it's kind of like a Theon situation in Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire, because he goes through a very similar thing, and you sort of realize, you develop a lot of sympathy for Theon through George's writing, but I felt like with what Bledla had done throughout the series, I had zero sympathy for him. And I don't know if that was the case, but I really was disappointed that it was Bledla, because I was like, oh man, it's not a character I even like. I don't want him around, our good characters, and like all this stuff, and Saren is trying to heal him, and Dayraven's trying to heal him. But another thing I really did not like, and this is a very tiny moment, it's not even, it's a major moment in the story, but it's sort of like, compared to the rest of the book, that was amazing. Like, it's just a tiny little complaint. But I really did not like that Dayraven gave up the power to one of the Edan priests, because I felt like that was a little too easy. We have this entire story where he's healing people, he's sort of like Jesus, and he's having this really amazing story arc, and the elf power in his head is starting to take over, and I really enjoyed those sections, and I thought it would take over, but before it takes over, he can feel the elf about to take over, so he willingly passes it off to the next priest, and he sort of is taken over by the elf and ends up making an entire zombie army and then starts marching towards the home of Dayraven, the Mark. And I really enjoyed it on a sort of like fantasy level, but in terms of what the characters were going through, I thought it was very unsatisfactory that Dayraven did that. And we sort of go back to Dayraven as he was in early book 2, where he's very skilled in the power, or in the Ankati, I think it's called. Really cool magic, but I was really disappointed by that because I was like, man, like that just felt so easy. Like I felt like, and I was really sort of like it sort of felt a little. I don't want to use the word cliched, but it felt a little cliched for like the final act of the story to be like, okay, now we have to, take over and destroy this big army, and we have a lot of our characters die during the section, so that's why I was a little like, man, like, it was a little disappointing to me, but overall, I really, really did love the series. I think it's absolutely worth reading, but there's little hiccups here and there, and I think overall it just doesn't really matter as much because there's so much just greatness going on in this book and in the series overall. And I'm very excited to get into the next book, While Darkness Gathers. And one thing that I haven't really discussed yet is Saren's storyline. I really, really loved, from the beginning to the end, her entire storyline. What an amazing character arc that Philip wrote. Because she goes through every sort of emotion throughout the story. She has just gone through the ringer with the death of her family, and then she has to sort of survive with all these rough and tumble soldiers, and then Dayraven comes and sort of gives her a new purpose in life as a translator for him. And I loved all of that. But then again, as the golem creature Bledla was reintroduced to the story, she starts to help him and tries to get him to find his humanity again. Which again, he's done so much bad that I just was not convinced that he could return to that level. But I was really sort of like, I just loved how she supported Dayraven, because by the end of the story, we find out that she is the niece of Emar, which is something that I did not think we would get much resolution with in the series. I thought we would just find out that Emar's sister was dead and like that was it, and that she didn't have a child, but ends up that she did have a child, and it's this amazing character, and I just really, really loved that. And I think that outshines everything like in this book, and it was just such a great sort of wrap up for the story. It's like one of the last pages is them reuniting, and I'm really looking forward to reading While Darkness Gathers. I cannot wait to see what that's about. I don't really know anything about it. I haven't looked up anything. Well, I know I'm gonna read it, so I'm not someone who like watches movie trailers or reads plot summaries on the back of books. If I know I'm going to read it, so yeah. There's a lot that I left out, but I do plan on having a interview with Philip once I finish While Darkness Gathers, and we will get into the nitty gritty there. And I'm very excited for that. I'm very grateful to Philip and his kindness for coming onto such a tiny channel such as mine, because I'm just some guy on the internet, and it's really great that we sort of have this ability to connect with authors and discuss their works. It's just such a great sort of thing to have in this world. This is what the internet is sort of like the best thing for, in my opinion. So I think that's about it. Yeah, so I don't really have too much else to say, but those were sort of the main highlights that I wanted to cover. So thank you all so much for watching, and please have a great rest of the day.